Well, thank you very much for coming. I know that this is final week, and all of you who are taking courses, which I assume is many of you here, I'm really happy that you came rather than studying more. I'm not sure that Erwin and Bill would agree with that, but I'm very happy to have you here. Well, I'm going to try and run through about 60 years of organic history. Can you hear me in the back? Or in about 60 minutes. And so I'm going to have to move fairly rapidly through this. I'm not going to talk about the economics of organic. I'm not going to do a literature review, which I know is very important here in academia. But I'm going to talk to a great degree about my own experiences over a long period of time working with organic. So I'm going to really try and address myself to 5 different things: shared values and principles and vision of organic, building the organic infrastructure, which is a very important piece of organic history, dealing with agricultural establishment disrespect, which has not completely disappeared, mobilizing public support for organic research. I've sort of superimposed on my usual presentation sort of the history of organic research because I'm on campus, and enacting a federal law to guarantee organic integrity. I had the wonderful experience in 1971 of visiting an organic farm. I did not know what an organic farm was. This was my first experience. Clarence Van Sant's farm near Grinnell, Iowa. I was with another group, and we drove into the yard, and you know, the dog was barking and all that stuff of a southern Iowa crop and livestock farm. Anyway, Clarence met us, and he had a shovel in his hand, and he said, well, come on, let me show you some things around the farm. So we kind of walked along the edge of the cornfield. This was early September when the corn was still pretty green. And he walked 2 or 3 steps between 2 rows, and he started turning over some of this black dirt. Honest to God, the earthworms rolled out. And I said to myself at that moment, I can't believe this. This is something that I really need to follow up on. So anyway, we looked at the farm, rich black soil, weed-free corn and soybeans, timothy and red clover hay ground, just like what I had grown up with in southern Iowa, his beautiful herd of Charolais cattle. And Clarence was selling he had an egg route, organic egg route in Grinnell, and he and his wife also started a health food store near Grinnell College. And of course, Clarence was trying to say, well, organic farmers, you know, to the best of their ability, should be selling direct to consumers. And he was doing that, and he said, of course, when you do that, nobody's going to beat you on price. He filled us in, and this was really the good part of the visit. He said there were quite a few organic farmers in the Midwest, and they were doing well, and this was total news to me. They had livestock and rotated their crops. They were mostly crop and livestock farmers. Most raised all of their own feed. Many purchased organic fertilizers and soil conditioners, and some were selling direct to consumers. Sources of information that organic farmers had at that time. There was the books of pioneer visionaries, mostly from Europe. Other organic farmers, there was a tremendous amount of sharing of information between organic farmers at that time. Companies that were selling organic inputs that were helping to build the organic movement. The national magazine Organic Gardening and Farming, and the Rodale Press. I'm sure many of you know about a lot of these books. I just want to mention 3 that have been important for me. One is, of course, F.H. King, Farmers of 40 Centuries. Having traveled in China myself, I really realized the significance of this book. Sir Albert Howard, who actually came and worked at Organic Gardening and Farming magazine to help J.I. Rodale understand everything about organic farming. And Herbert Kupf, who came to this country a number of times and held meetings and ended up as a scientist at Michael Fields before he went back to Germany. And it was mostly about, and he has a wonderful book, The Biodynamic Farm. Even 40 years ago, the Rodale Press put out a directory, and 1,600 growers, health food stores, distributors, 200 sources of natural fertilizers and soil conditioners and so forth, 500 ecology action groups, and 100 Rodale organized organic gardening clubs. So there was an awful lot going on that I had somehow missed all that time. An organic gardening magazine at that time had 900,000 subscribers. And J.I. Rodale was very frustrated because initially, when he started to champion organic, he reached out to farmers, and he had a distribution to get subscriptions from farmers, and he got nothing back. And then he offered to provide the magazine to county extension directors free, and he still got nothing back. And so J.I. Rodale said, okay, I'm going to go with the consumers, and started putting a lot of organic material into the magazine. And that was my opportunity to really become much more involved. I had a relationship with Rodale Press in the early 70s, and I did a lot of visiting farms, recorded them, photographed them, and wrote stories about them, not only for organic gardening and farming, but for other magazines as well. So I became very much involved in writing profiles and other stories about organic farmers. It was a perfect opportunity for me at that time. So I want to just let you see a few of the farmers that I visited and wrote about. Engelken's Iowa farm, northeast Iowa, a really outstanding, large farm. And this is an example of how many farmers changed to organic because of some kind of a health problem in the family. Someone was chemically sensitive. In this case, it was because Ralph had been out doing spraying on conventional farms as part of his work, and they decided they would just go cold turkey organic. It's a fantastic farm. I actually had invited Ralph later to 2 or 3 conferences. He turned out to be a pretty good speaker. Casey Livermore, and you can see how he became a believer pretty quickly. But the reason I have this picture is because I got a call one day from, actually from Del Ockerlund, who we'll see next, saying there had been a very bad drought in eastern Nebraska, and the organic farmers had good crops, and the other farmers had failures. So I, of course, went out there to write a story about this and to do some pictures. Well, Casey's corn made 100 bushels to the acre, while his neighbors were not getting anything. And Del Ockerlund, incredible organic farmer, and I have a wonderful quote here from Del. He got a big wildlife award, as you can probably imagine from this statement. But to say that there were so many pheasants on his farm that he had to stop the combine to let them out of the way. 200, he said. And he credited, as many organic farmers did at that time, birds and other wildlife as being a very important part of their operation. The hobbies in South Dakota, a lot of beef, dairy, and hogs, a very large organic operation. But I think the key thing from the hobbies was something that I heard at virtually every organic farm that I visited during this period. We don't have any vet bills. And the animal health thing, in addition to the health benefits for the family, that's one of the first things farmers wanted to talk about was no vet bills. The next thing they wanted to talk about was how wonderful their soil was and how all the neighbors had worked so easily. And then there was Ray Jewell and this wonderful farm developing these organic flowers. And one of the largest operations in the country, Ray was buying organic grains from all over the Midwest. And he says, you know, this flower was so popular. It was so popular that people in the Twin Cities were sending an envelope to Ray with $20 in and saying, send me however much flour this will cover. And that company is still in business. Now, there were many organic vegetable farms in the 70s, but I have to say that I did not visit many of them. I don't really know why. But two of them that I did visit, I want to tell you just a little bit about them. One was in the Kansas City area, and the other one was in Illinois. And in both cases, these farms were so clean that everything they raised went for chemically sensitive people. And on the one in the Kansas City area, chemically sensitive people actually came out to the farm and helped with the harvesting. They were that clean. And chemical sensitivity was a very big deal at that time, and quite a number of organic farmers had to switched because some member of their family or themselves had become chemically sensitive. The other reason that some of them switched was that their cows drank out of a stream that came off another farmer's land and died because of the pesticides that were in the water. It was very interesting in the 70s that the census didn't even count women farmers. And I have to say, as kind of a confession, that I always interviewed the man and used the man's quotes in the stories. And as I look back, I think, you know, that was really not what should have been done. But I did take pictures, Mrs. Van Sant in the picture. I did take pictures with the women, but I didn't put them in the stories. So anyway, there's been a huge change in the role of women in organic, and the Census Bureau too, which now counts everybody. One of the interesting things that I had mentioned to Claire and Adrian, in the 62 grants that I was responsible for the Series Trust, knowing I was going to have this slide up here, I checked yesterday to see how many of the grantees were women and how many were men. Out of 62, it was 31 and 31. So the Series Trust really looks pretty good on this, I think. The other thing that I think would make a great master's thesis is the great increase in the number of women that are heading or have top positions in organic organizations. And I can just mention a couple. Organic Farming Research Foundation, the chair, the executive director. Organic Trade Association, the president and the executive director. Practical Farmers of Iowa, several of the big certifiers. I mean, I think that in many ways, for nonprofits and certifying organizations and others, that the women kind of appear to be taken over. And many of you know about Faye Jones, of course, with Moses and so forth. But this really is a huge trend, and it's continuing. And also we have, I don't have good numbers on this, but many more women owners, operators of small farms. These were, again, farmers that I found in Minnesota. As far as I know, this was the first publicly funded organic research project anywhere. $3,500, Southwest Minnesota State University. There were a couple of professors there who were friendly to organic. And what the project involved really was testing water runoff from tiles on conventional and organic, because farmers were worried about nitrogen contamination of their wells. But anyway, that was the first project. The input companies played a very important